Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Time for Truth Show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard, you don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart, yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and I welcome you back. Many of you have been asking, how do you avail yourself of the show? It's very simple. Go on YouTube, click on A Time for Truth show, hit the subscribe button, and we'll be more than happy to have you as our member. You'll be availed of all the previous episodes. And tonight we have a very special show. I think many of you know that I was born in Cuba and I immigrated to leave communism for freedom in the United States of America. And at the airport, I lost my little toolbox. I was a little 8-year-old boy, and the communist customs agent took my toolbox. I never forgot it. And my guest tonight that I was speaking to just before the show, he and I were talking about how life molds our experiences. So tonight, we want to change the world between our guest and I. And so, Buddha, if you will, let's put his pictures up on the screen. He's a very prolific human being. Dr. Chelton Blackburn MD, a neurologist trained at the medical school of Indiana and Purdue University, Indianapolis. He's on the Chicago board of XS Tennis. He provides pro tennis tournaments in Chicago and organizes annual tennis expos for health and wellness exhibits. The doctor is also on the board of the Renaissance Collective, having built shelters for women and seniors. He's on the board of the Chicago African Festival of the Arts and is a member of Salem Baptist Church of Chicago, which is the largest and also non-denominational church in Chicago, with an activist work ethic and purpose to improve people's lives, something that we need in this world. He grew up next door to Miss Till Mobley in 1955, the year her son Emmett Till was brutally murdered. He marched with Dr. Martin Luther King and Mrs. Mobley at a young age. The doctor was beaten with bricks and bottles and suffered head injuries and hospitalization when he was 8 years old in Marquette Park. The marching ministers at that time mistakenly thought that putting children at the front would stop the racism and bigotry and hatred. They were wrong. Dr. Blackburn continues in many civil rights movements, and he continued at Loyola College, where he was president of LUASA, of Professional Financial Planners, and subsequently flew to South Africa to help free Nelson Mandela. In 2016, while driving seniors to the polls to have them vote, he was shot and peppered with paint guns In 2019, he traveled to Alabama, but was stabbed by racist Judge Roy Moore's supporters in a race for a Senate seat. But that still didn't stop the doctor. In 2020 in Atlanta, he continued to Atlanta to help people there with voting, but was beaten with bats and suffered a broken jaw. He's worked in marriage ministry and also in evangelical ministry. He's an amazing, prolific, nonstop humanitarian human being. And Buddha, if you will, let's bring him up live and bid a warm welcome to Dr. Chelton Blackburn to a Time for Truth show. How are you, Doctor?
I'm good. Very glad to be here.
Thank you for taking your time. I don't know, you must have a different clock. I think you must have 36-hour days because I have no idea. Reading your bio, which I cut up and tried to get rid of so much, and it still took almost the whole show. So let's get right to it.
Well, the last name is Blackburn. I think they have it down as Blackwell. I grew up and played basketball with a young man named Blackwell, but my last name is Blackburn.
Blackburn. Okay, I'm very sorry, Dr. Blackburn.
That's okay.
So we correct that for the rest of the show here.
My high school basketball teammate was Blackwell.
Well, we get him involved in this show too, you know. But okay. I want to ask you a question because you went through so much. You went through so much when you were a young guy. How did you survive those early years?
Well, when we were younger, you know, we could not use the bathrooms as when we went down south with our parents. And my father was a Chicago policeman. And, you know, when I saw a bathroom, my father grabbed me and says, "You can't go in there." I said, "Daddy, it says white shoes only." He says, "It doesn't say white shoes only." And I went in the bathroom anyway. So I guess I was defiant as a kid. And I was probably 5 or 6 when that happened. But, you know, we couldn't use bathrooms. We couldn't stay in hotels. So we had a lot to fight for to change the country that we're in to make it more fair for everyone.
You know, it's interesting. You brought a story back to mind to me because I was in the Dominican Republic. You know, I'm Spanish born, and I met Ricardo Cardi, who played baseball with Hank Aaron. And when Ricardo Cardi came to the United States from the Dominican Republic, there was a restaurant where they didn't want to let the African American players in. And Ricardo Cardi made a big deal about it. He said, "What are you talking about? What am I? What's the difference?" And, you know, he stood up for it. So, you know, it's very interesting what our world has gone through. But, so keep going. So how do these experiences, how do they impact you?
Well, you know, as a kid, when you're told you can't even do basic humanitarian things like use a restroom, you can't stay in a hotel. We used to sleep in the car, you know, when we took trips because we couldn't stop and stay in the hotels. So it's, you know, I think, you know, my children don't really have an understanding of that. We try and show them so that we can make the world better. But right now, you know, there's a movement to take us backwards instead of forwards, which is so sad. But we, you know, all people are the same. We bleed the same blood. And unfortunately, you know, when people try and separate us or keep racism up, it's not good for anybody. It's not even good for the people who think that they're doing the right thing. You know, we have to all work together. If we don't, look at where we're going to be. We're already, you know, polluting ourselves. We're not thinking about our children. We're not thinking about the future. So, yeah, my life was impacted as an early kid by not being able to just use the bathroom. Quite sad, isn't it?
It's really insane. And, you know, I myself, I guess since I was a little boy, being a Jewish guy and losing my country to communism, went through a little bit, not as much as you did, obviously, no comparison, but went through my own travails with Prejudice and whatever. Like the favorite comments in Connecticut where I grew up, which my friends, which was a racist comment, but they'd say, "Well, Ben, you're different. You're not like a Jew." And I always wonder, well, what is a Jew? You know, and, you know, like you said, both of us are doctors, so that I think people have to realize that we all suffer from the same diseases. We have the same blood, like you said. It makes me curious. Why did you choose a medical career?
Well, as a kid, I was always inventing things, and my mother, we couldn't join 4-H, so my mother started her own 4-H program. So when I was younger, I invented a puzzle that had 144 different light combinations, which was more complicated than a Rubik's Cube. And, you know, I entered all these contests, and I lost out to a kid, a Caucasian kid who had his parents had bought him a light kit from Radio Shack, a kit. I made my own switches. I cut my wood. I made my own puzzle. And I know mine was a phenomenal puzzle. And I lost out to someone who just bought a kit. And I realized the world wasn't fair. So I think I probably diverted from inventing and creating things. And as a smart kid, of course, you know, you think, well, I'll just become a doctor. I think that's what probably led me that direction. But even now, you know, I think I told you that I designed the original outfits for the '84 Olympics, and I made, you know, I'm creative. I came up with something creative, and I think, you know, just like you, we're both smart kids, so we think of dentistry and medicine, right? Because we didn't know any better. There's lots of other things that we could do. And I think I do lots of other things besides that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you're being very humble. I was going to ask you, so here you are, you have this neurological medical career, and I don't know if I would say change. Let's not use that word.
Pivot.
You incorporate, you expand, and you incorporate, and now you're also a religious minister. How did that occur?
Well, when I was younger, I thought becoming a priest would be the logical thing to helping people, because that's what my life was about. And, you know, I joined the seminary. I went to a Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school, Catholic university, and I was a part-time member of Quigley Seminary. And in being part of Quigley, they treated Black people totally different in the seminary. And I said, wait a minute. We're trying to serve God, and there's prejudice here. So I think the majority of us who had, you know, were taking classes in the seminary, almost all of us never became priests, but I think all of us still have been involved with churches all of our lives. So there's other things you can do besides being a priest to help people. And that was just a learning experience. So, and it took me years to find the church that I love. And I love my church because we're an activist church. We work to help people. You know, I captain Feed the Hungry, and we bring food to people's homes instead of making them stand in line and demeaning them. So we try and serve people. We try and help. And I think that's why I belong to that church. And I think, as you know, that church has grown to be Chicago's largest church now. We seat 10,500 people. So we've grown a lot. And I think that's because we've had pastors who really do care about people.
It's an amazing, I've never heard of a church that large. That's really quite a testament.
We were a small church when I joined. We ended up buying a Catholic church, which held about 2,500 people. That wasn't big enough. And then we built our House of Hope, which actually, I think when we use everything, we can seat over 11,000 people.
That is unbelievable. Now, on top of all of this, and I didn't realize it when I first spoke to you and we talked about doing the show, but I don't know how or where you find the time. You also have this tremendous tennis profession or investment or experience or club, or so tell us a little bit
Well,
about what is it, tennis
let me
excess, right?
clarify that. When I went to, I played basketball in college, and then and in high school, and I know what happened. I wanted to learn how to play tennis, and I went to the courts, and I kept seeing the same guy every day, and he actually, I don't know, you're Jewish, so you probably know who Marty Reeson is.
Sure,
He was Arthur Ashe's tennis partner in the pros, but
that's right.
he was a Jewish tennis player who was mistreated a lot in the in his profession, and he was injured during the time. And I watched him every single day for about a week. And one day his partner didn't show up, and he said, "You want to hit?" I said, "I've never hit a tennis ball in my life." So he says, "Come on down." He gave me a tennis racket, and I had studied him for an entire week. And I hit the same weight he did because that's who first person I ever hit with. So the first person I ever hit with, I think he was ranked number 6 in the world. So that was the first guy that I ever. And then he gave me rackets. And after then, I was doing at that time. I think I was in medical school, and that next year I was going off to California to do my residency, and I played tennis every day. So the coach of UCLA, he says to me, he says, "Are you trying out for the tennis team?" I said, "Look, I've already finished college. I've already finished medical school. Of course, I'm not trying out for the tennis team." He says, "But we're one guy short. Would you like to work out?" So for a whole year, he let me work out with the team, and I played some of the top players. I didn't realize they were top players in the country at the time. But UCLA was the number one tennis team back then. And I played all these guys, and I lost every single match for an entire year. I played some guys 3 times a day. I lost, I'd say, I don't know, between 500 or 600 times. I never won a single tennis match in my life. So I came back to Chicago my first summer, after doing my first year of my residency. I come back to Chicago, and some friends say, "You want to play in a tennis tournament?" And I said, "I'm not very good. I've never won a match in my entire life." So I played in the tennis tournament, and I beat everybody in Chicago easily. And I said, "This is really strange. I'm not very good. How can I beat anybody?" But I didn't realize I had been playing with really good players for years. And matter of fact, Jimmy Pugh was probably the number 6 player for UCLA, but he was number 2 doubles player. He was number 2 doubles, and he actually became one of the top 10 doubles players. So that same summer, I won 2 tournaments, and then somebody told me I couldn't play in this one tournament. I said, "Why?" They said, "You're a professional." I started laughing. I said, "I'm not a professional. I'm a beginner." And they said, "Well, you're in the newspaper." And I was in the newspaper because I guess the second tournament that I won was the qualifications for the U.S. clay courts, which was held in Indianapolis, which is where I went to medical school. So I actually got to play Jimmy Pugh, a guy who had beat me maybe 80 times. And I beat him once. I had learned how to win. That's in life. You have to learn how to win in life. And tennis is just a microcosm of the world. Sport is a microcosm, and I actually beat Jimmy Pugh in that tournament, which was really odd, right? Guy I had lost 80 times, but once I won those 2 tournaments, I had learned how to win. So over the years after then, I taught my children how to play, and my son played for Howard University. He was the captain of their tennis team for 3 years. So it saved me a little money, having a child get tennis scholarships, right?
Absolutely.
And then after then, in Chicago, we have the president of our tennis club had a vision, and his vision was, we had tore down a lot of the projects in Chicago. So we ended up getting enough land to build a 2-block long tennis club with 27 tennis courts. And we have indoor and outdoor tennis courts. And during COVID, tennis tournaments weren't going to be able to be held in China, right? So we stole tournaments that would have normally been in China, and we had 3 professional tennis tournaments in a row, women's tennis tournaments in a row, one right after another. We had kind of a tennis festival, which, you know, we don't have tennis tournaments in Chicago, but our club held 3 in a row, and since then we've been bringing them to Chicago for the past 4 years now, and which really is beneficial to children. And our club, we give every kid that is a member of our club gets free tutoring because we want to keep their grades up so they can get scholarships. So I love my club.
It's
Here to do
amazing.
whatever they want.
It's amazing. And you know what? If I don't ask you this question, I'm probably going to get people up at arms. So, and you mentioned something that I think would be very beneficial for people in general. What is the key to winning? You talked about the mindset of winning.
Believing in yourself, because as I told you, I lost, and I'm not exaggerating, between 500 to 700 times every single day. I never, ever won a single tennis match in my life for an entire year. But I was also playing guys who eventually became professionals from UCLA, right? So I think, you know, in basketball, you know, we were one of the best teams in high school. It's believing in yourself. And I had a mother who raised us because of probably civil rights. She raised me and my 2 brothers to be the best. Her first statements always was first, best, and number one. And the last 2 years of her life, she lived with me and my children. And my kids laughed because my mother had a stroke. She could only use one arm. And you remember when the Wii came out? Remember
Yes.
the Wii game came out and
That's
you were
right.
interactive? Well,
Yes.
my mother was playing the Wii with one arm. That's all she could use was one arm because she had a stroke. And my kids learned how to serve because they were serving to help her use the bathroom, to bathe her. But they were laughing at my mother. They said, "Is that all your mom says is first, best, or number one?" I said, yeah. And that's been my brothers and our motto all of our lives. You know, when the one year that I became the number 1 real estate broker in the United States, the broker asked me at Coldwell Banker, he says, "Did you think you would be number 1?" And I said, "Well, yes, I aim to be number 1. If you aim high, even if you fall short, look at where you're falling.
Right.
If you always aim to be the best." And that's how my mother instilled it. You know, matter of fact, I don't mean to brag on my big brother, but my big brother was just voted the number 1 percussionist in the world this year. That's Kahil El-Zabar. So it's just how we were raised.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that, and the mantra is so true. Now, I want to ask you a question. What was it like to have known Dr. Martin Luther King?
He was very nice, quiet man. Powerful. I guess that's a better word. Quiet, but powerful. Because growing up, Mrs. Mobley, you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but when she left the casket open with her son so the world could see how brutally he was beaten, that inspired Dr. King and I guess other Black leaders to stop. As I told you, we couldn't use bathrooms, to stop. We couldn't live in neighborhoods. We couldn't do a whole lot of things. And what she did was inspire. So there were many Black leaders, there were many Jewish leaders that used to be at Mrs. Mobley's house. It wasn't just Dr. King. There were a whole lot of other leaders that would come there for guidance from her and direction. So, you know, as a kid, my parents didn't fly. So I was traveling with her, you know, because she never had any other children. She never had any other children, which is sad, but she became a teacher. And I think she taught a lot of us. You know, when I was 11, she realized I was a little odd. So she got me into IIT. So I was in college when I was 11. And my mother and father wanted me to be normal. So they actually took me out of college and made me go to regular school. It is what it is, but I understand their thinking. but I think she understood me, and that's probably why she put me in college at such an early age. So,
Very interesting.
yes, meeting Dr. King and meeting a lot of other Black leaders was so inspiring. But when I met Dr. King, he said that Chicago was the most racist city he had ever been in, because he was shocked that they would bust our heads open, little kids. He was shocked. He didn't think that would happen in any other city. And it was just cruel that these people were so evil and so racist in Chicago.
Well, you know what? When you shared that story with me as we were preparing for the show, it really is horrific to think that a human being could do that to a child, and so brutally. It's insane. But I don't want to speak because you're the one that went through it, and the show is so important for people because here you are. I mean, I know people are going to say that, well, I'm a white man, you're a black man. I know neither one of us looks at it
We're
that
people.
way.
We are
we're people. That's right. But this is for the rest of the world watching. So for those of them who think this way, let me ask you a question. What would you want to share with people regarding, this civil rights and this human rights abuse that you suffered from, that I had some suffering from? Please comment on that for our viewers.
Well, there's a whole lot of people that don't have faith, and I think it doesn't matter what religion you are. I don't care whether you feel that you're Hebrew, or whether you're Catholic, or whether you're Hindu. If you notice, all religions have the same common good. It's just bad people become leaders in religions and try and convince people. There's nothing in the Quran telling anybody to commit suicide. And we've all heard these religious leaders trying to convince people to kill themselves to hurt other people. They're not killing themselves, are they? They're sending their underlings or other people to kill themselves and hurt. If you study any religion, they teach the same basic good.
That's right.
That's where people go wrong, by following the bad people who are leading. It's the religions aren't bad. It's the bad leaders within these particular religions. I have a goddaughter, and she got pregnant, and she went to a church, and they wouldn't let her in because she had on pants. She didn't have many clothes she could wear because she was pregnant, but she was reaching out, and they told her she couldn't go in because she didn't have on the right attire. Is that important? She was seeking God, and you didn't let her in because of what she had on. She wasn't naked. So unfortunately, these leaders try and there's nothing in any religion that tells them how they're supposed to dress, that a woman can't wear pants. Is that really important? You should come as you are, right?
That's right.
So unfortunately, we have too many bad leaders and people who think about just themselves. And that happens a lot with policing. I don't mean to get into policing, but I think you probably know what happened to Tyreek Hill this weekend. And that happens.
I didn't know. Tell me. I didn't know. Tell me.
Tyreek Hill is the best receiver in all of football. He's a star.
Just so you know, I met Tyreek Hill in, I think it was Minnesota.
Really?
It was a tiki barber's party, and I met him. And I met him at the beginning when he was just starting. He was the most normal, humble. He talked to me. He wanted to work drug-free world with me. But his manager, the manager stopped him because he wanted to bring us to his home, Kansas City. So I didn't know anything. He's a great guy. What happened?
Well, this weekend he was on his way Saturday or Sunday to the game. And, he's got a really fancy sports car. I mean, the guy's a multi-millionaire. And the police stopped him, took him out of the car, threw him down on the ground, kneeled all into his back. They tried to say that he wasn't cooperating. Well, first of all, he was on his way to the game. And there was a lot of people around, so it was filmed everywhere with the policeman. The policeman who kneeled in his back, they have suspended him, or he's on temporary suspension right now in Miami. And Tyreek went to the game. He scored a touchdown, And after he scored the touchdown, he put his hands behind his back to show how they handcuffed him and put their knee in his back. But even though he's a rich, famous guy, I guess they didn't recognize him, but he's a black man.
Wow.
And unfortunately, even though he's the greatest right now, the greatest wide receiver in the world, but you see how he was still treated? And that's unfortunate that we still treat people like that. We don't see them as human beings. He was seen as just a black man. It didn't matter that he was famous. I mean, afterwards, they didn't recognize him, but people all around said who he was, whatever. So, they let him go. But it's all on camera how they treated him. And unfortunately, that happens to us far too often. And it's only because of the way we look. Is that really important? Yeah, remember what we said earlier? We're all people.
Right.
But because of racism and people teaching racism, and they're teaching kids now, we're going backwards instead of forwards. There was a time when you could say because of the civil rights movement, people were getting along better. At our church, we have people from synagogues that come to our church. We have people from we've had Father Flager, who's a Catholic priest, come. We've had people from all different religions come to our church because we're non-denominational. And I think because of that, we're uniters instead of people who are, trying to split someone up or saying that someone's better than anyone else or you're smart or whatever. I'm a pretty smart guy, but I'm no better than anybody else. I've had better opportunities than the average black person because my daddy worked as a full-time furniture mover. He was a full-time policeman in Chicago at the same time. Another job he had was as a tailor, which is probably why me and my brothers all sew. We watched my father. We didn't get to see him very often because he worked 2 full-time jobs all the time. But he did that so he could send us to Catholic school. So I've had better opportunities than the average person. That doesn't mean that I'm smarter. I've just had better opportunities. And if you give kids opportunities, you asked me earlier, how do you win? Well, it's hard for some people to come up. I've never met Denzel Washington, but I listened to his story. And the one advantage that New York has over Chicago and a lot of other cities, a lot of poor kids get to go to school with rich kids. They're not as separated, where Chicago's a lot more segregated. So you have a few kids who get to succeed, and the majority of kids are in poor schools and they don't get to succeed. Were they any smarter than anyone else? No, they just had less opportunity. And I'm very fortunate that I had the parents that I had and the brothers that I had. And we don't really see the limits that the average person is. But I'm not going to say that I'm any better than any other black person because I've had better opportunities. So it wasn't difficult to become a doctor. And a lot of my family thought I was crazy when I left to start businesses. In fact, my mother didn't speak to me for a while when I left medicine. They thought something was wrong with me. But I helped my mother open a bridal business. And for years, my mother used to sell out of the basement of her house. She had customers like Muhammad Ali back when he was Cassius Clay, and Minnie Riperton, and a whole lot of other celebrities would come buy clothing from my mother.
Dr. Blackburn, unfortunately, I think you and I are going to need to have more shows. First, we run out of time. So unfortunately, we have to. I'm sorry I had to cut you off, but I wanted to say something. Number one is thank you. Number two, you're a very humble man and a great example for anyone who's going to watch this show. I think we have to realize, like what you said to end the show, we got to realize that we're on this planet in the middle of a galaxy, in the middle of cold nothingness, and we're lucky that we're together and that we have an opportunity on this planet to work together, and that we need to find a bigger game, like you said, not to hurt each other. When if we go out into space, or we go out to the desert, or we go out into the Arctic cold, we're going to realize how much we need that green guy, that yellow guy, that blue guy, whatever color he is, whatever religion he is, you're going to need that other person. So number one is thank you.
I thank you.
Number two is I look forward to having you again. Number three, I want to thank Globetrotter Bobby Hunter for introducing Latrice Porter to me. We went down to Washington, D.C. for this Million Women March, United for Families, and I met you there. It's an honor to meet you. I know we're going to work more together. And unfortunately, this show has ended, but we're going to definitely have some more. For those of you watching, let's listen to this genius's words, this humble man who's making less of everything he's done. Let's do it before some insane person blows up this planet or biologically destroys it with some kind of chemical insanity. Let's listen to Dr. Blackburn. Let's do and follow his lead. Let's have some humility. Let's work together. See you on the next episode. Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. We'll see you on the next episode of our Time for Truth show. Good night.
Good night.
This show was sponsored by Atimefortruthfoundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet